There's a dish in Brazil that takes 7 days to make. Not 7 days of slow preparation, not 7 days of marinating in a refrigerator, 7 days of continuous cooking over an open fire, watched and stirred and tended like a living thing that must never be allowed to rest. And the reason it must never stop cooking is not tradition. It is not superstition. It is chemistry. Because inside the leaves used to make this dish, there is a poison. A real one. The kind that has killed people. The kind that, if the fire goes out at the wrong moment, turns a family meal into something no one at that table will survive. This dish is called Maniçoba, and it is one of the most beloved foods in the entire Amazon region of Brazil. To understand how something this dangerous became something this cherished, you have to go back to the beginning. Not just to the recipe, but to the plant itself, and to the people who first learned what it could do, and what it could do to you if you weren't careful. The plant is called Mandioca brava in Portuguese, which translates roughly to wild cassava, or bitter cassava. It belongs to the same family as the cassava root that feeds hundreds of millions of people around the world. You may have eaten cassava before without knowing it. It appears in tapioca, in certain types of flour, in chips and flatbreads and soups across Africa, Asia, and Latin America. Cassava has been a cornerstone of tropical agriculture for thousands of years. It grows in poor soil. It survives drought. It produces enormous quantities of starchy, filling root vegetables that can be processed into dozens of different foods. But there are two very different types of cassava. There is sweet cassava, which is relatively safe to eat with minimal processing. And there is bitter cassava, which contains something the sweet variety does not. Bitter cassava contains compounds called cyanogenic glycosides. These are molecules that, when the plant's tissue is damaged, when its leaves are crushed or chewed or cut, react with naturally occurring enzymes in the plant and produce hydrogen cyanide. Not a trace amount, not a quantity you could dismiss. In raw bitter cassava leaves, the concentration of hydrogen cyanide can be high enough to cause serious harm or death to an adult human being, and Maniçoba is made entirely from those leaves. The indigenous peoples of the Amazon had thousands of years to learn this. They were not working with chemistry textbooks or laboratory instruments. They were not able to measure hydrogen cyanide concentrations or consult scientific literature about the thermal degradation of glycoside compounds. They were working with observation, with memory passed down through generations, with the kind of knowledge that comes from watching what happens when you do something wrong, and making certain your children remember never to repeat it. They learned that the poison in the leaves was not permanent. They learned that heat, sustained heat applied over a very long period of time, could break down the cyanogenic compounds and render the leaves safe to eat. They learned that this process could not be rushed. They learned, almost certainly through tragedy, exactly what happened when it was. This kind of knowledge is not written down anywhere, because for most of human history it did not need to be. It lived in practice. It lived in the hands of the person tending the fire, and in the warning passed from grandmother to grandchild, and in the collective memory of a community that could not afford to forget. The preparation of Maniçoba begins with the harvest of the leaves. Fresh, dark green leaves from the Mandioca brava plant, gathered by hand, then brought back and ground into a thick, dark paste. This grinding process is important. It ruptures the plant cells and begins the chemical reaction that releases the cyanide. The paste smells sharp and slightly bitter at this stage. It looks like nothing you would want to eat. But this is where the transformation begins. The paste goes into a large pot. A fire is lit beneath it, and then it cooks for 7 days. Sometimes 6 if the fire was exceptionally hot and constant throughout, but never less. The cooking cannot stop in the middle. It cannot be paused for the night and restarted in the morning. The cyanide compounds are not fully neutralized in one long burst of heat. They break down gradually, continuously, as long as the temperature is maintained. If the fire dies out midway through the process and the pot cools significantly, the breakdown halts. The leaves sit in a warm, moist environment, neither fully poisonous nor fully safe. And if someone were to taste them at that point, not knowing, the results could be catastrophic. This is not a hypothetical concern. There are documented cases throughout Brazil's history of people being poisoned by improperly prepared bitter cassava products. The symptoms of cyanide poisoning move fast. Dizziness and headache come first, sometimes within minutes of ingestion. Then nausea, rapid breathing, a racing heart. In severe cases, the body begins to lose its ability to use oxygen at the cellular level, even as the lungs continue to pull air. The person suffocates from the inside. Without immediate medical intervention, the outcome can be fatal. The families who make Maniçoba know this. They have always known this. It is part of the dish's identity, woven into the culture surrounding it. You do not make Maniçoba casually. You do not start the pot on a Tuesday afternoon because you felt like it. You plan it. You prepare. You ensure you have enough wood, enough water, enough people around to keep the fire going through the night. In many households, tending the Maniçoba pot is a communal responsibility. Family members take shifts. Someone is always awake, always watching, always feeding the fire so it never drops below the temperature needed to keep the process moving forward. By the third day, the paste has changed dramatically. The sharp smell is gone. The dark green color has deepened into something closer to black, a rich, almost tar-like darkness that experienced cooks recognize as a sign that things are going correctly. The texture has become smoother, denser, more cohesive. The bitterness has faded. Something else is emerging, something complex and savory and deep, the kind of flavor that only comes from time and heat working together over many days. And by the fifth day, the aroma coming from the pot is extraordinary. It fills the house. It drifts into the street. Neighbors who know what that smell means understand that something important is approaching completion. The paste has transformed into something that no longer resembles its raw ingredients in any meaningful way. It has become a thick, dark, intensely flavored base that is entirely new, a product not just of cooking, but of a kind of alchemy that requires patience as its primary ingredient. On the seventh day, the Maniçoba is ready for its final preparation. This is when the other ingredients are added. Smoked pork in several different cuts, including parts of the animal that are rarely used in other culinary traditions. Feet and ears and rind and salted jerky. All of it slow cooked together with the leaf paste into a single unified stew. The fat from the pork renders into the dark base, enriching it further. The salt from the cured meats seasons everything. The smoke from the wood fire that cooked the leaves for 7 days has left its own trace in the flavor. Something subtle but unmistakable, like a memory of the fire itself preserved inside the food. The final dish is thick, almost black, impossibly fragrant. It is served over white rice, which acts as a canvas for the intense, concentrated flavor of the stew. Sometimes it is accompanied by farinha, a coarse cassava flour that is itself a product of the safe, sweet variety of the same plant, whose dangerous cousin provided the main ingredient. This detail is not lost on people from the region. Two products of the same plant family, one transformed by 7 days of fire into something safe and extraordinary, the other processed quickly and simply. The contrast says something about the relationship between the Amazon and its people, about the depth of knowledge required to live well in an environment that does not offer its gifts without conditions. A meal that contains within it a reminder of what it costs to learn how to make it. Maniçoba is considered one of the 4 most important dishes in the cuisine of Pará, the Brazilian state that covers a large portion of the eastern Amazon. The other 3 are also products of an intensely regional culinary tradition, rooted in indigenous techniques and Amazonian ingredients. But Maniçoba holds a particular position among them. It is the dish that requires the most commitment, the most knowledge, the most trust between the person making it and everyone who will eat it. When someone serves you Maniçoba, they are telling you that they have watched that pot for 7 days, that they did not let the fire go out, that they know what they are doing, and that you are safe. In the city of Belém, the capital of Pará, Maniçoba is a fixture of the Círio de Nazaré, the largest Catholic procession in the world, which draws more than 2 million people each year to honor Our Lady of Nazareth. The feast day celebrations that surround the Círio are inseparable from food, and Maniçoba is central to those celebrations. Families begin their pots days before the festival. The smell of Maniçoba cooking is part of the sensory landscape of the Círio, as much as the candles and the hymns and the flowers. You cannot separate the dish from the event, or the event from the dish. This is what it means for food to be cultural. Not simply that it tastes good, or that it is traditional, or that it has been around for a long time. It means that the food is embedded in the memory of a people, that eating it recalls something larger than the meal itself. That preparing it is an act of connection to everyone who prepared it before you, and everyone who will prepare it after you. Maniçoba is dangerous, and it is difficult, and it takes 7 days, and all of those things are part of why it matters so deeply to the people who grew up with it. Outside of Pará, few Brazilians have ever tasted it. It is difficult to transport because it requires refrigeration after preparation and does not travel well across the vast distances of the country. It is rarely found on restaurant menus outside the Amazon region. Most Brazilians know it exists, the way you might know that a particular distant region of your country has a food you have never encountered and may never encounter. But in Pará, it is not exotic. It is not unusual. It is simply dinner. It is what you make when there is something worth celebrating, when you have enough people around to watch the fire, when you want to feed someone something that took everything you had to give. There is a version of this story that focuses only on the danger, that emphasizes the poison and the deaths and the risk, that treats Maniçoba as a curiosity, something strange that people in a distant place do with a plant that can kill them, a fact to be marveled at from a safe distance. That version misses everything important. The poison is not the point. The 7 days are not the point. The point is what those 7 days mean. The point is the knowledge required to make them work. The point is the fire that cannot go out, the family that takes turns watching it, the dark paste that becomes something extraordinary through patience and care and the accumulated wisdom of 1,000 Years of people who knew exactly what they were doing. The Amazon is not a place that forgives ignorance easily. It is an ecosystem of extraordinary complexity and extraordinary danger, where the line between what sustains life and what ends it can be very thin. The people who have lived in and around the Amazon for thousands of years developed knowledge systems sophisticated enough to navigate that complexity, to identify what was safe and what was deadly, to find the techniques that transform the dangerous into the nourishing. Maniçoba is one expression of that knowledge, a dark, thick, 7-day expression, but an expression of mastery, not recklessness. There is no accident in Maniçoba. Every step of it is deliberate. Every day of cooking is intentional. The danger was not discovered after the fact. It was known from the beginning, and the technique was built around that knowledge, shaped by it, made inseparable from it, until what remained was not a dangerous dish, made safe by luck, but a safe dish that carries the memory of its danger in every careful hour of its preparation. The next time you sit down to a meal that took 30 minutes to prepare, think about what it would mean to tend something for 7 days without stopping, to keep a fire alive through the night so that the food in the pot remains safe for the people you love. To know, with the certainty that only deep knowledge provides, that on the 7th day what you have made will be extraordinary and that no one will be harmed by it. That is what Maniçoba requires. That is what it has always required. And that is why, in the state of Pará, in the kitchens of families who have made this dish for generations, a 7-day pot of black leaves cooking over a fire is not a warning. It is a promise